out of high school, I joined the Navy. So I spent 3 years in the Navy. And then when I got out in 64, I enrolled at Michigan State and enrolled as a math education major, and then switched to electrical engineering, and then eventually in my junior year switched to packaging and graduated in August of 1968. In my junior year, January, the first week or two of the winter term, a guy came through a stop sign and T-boned me. Ended up in the hospital. I I couldn't remember anything for like 2 or 3 days. I had amnesia. And when I got out, I still was in the span that I could get my money back if I canceled class. And I felt I should do that because when you're in electrical engineering, it's a sequence of courses at that point in time. And so I dropped off for that term, went back in the spring, and they told me those courses only offered once a year. So I would have to wait till fall to get back into sequence. And I was on the GI Bill, so I didn't have time or money to burn like that. So my freshman year in dorm fee, one of my roommates, Tom Cardinal, was a packaging major. It seemed kind of interesting. He made boxes and did testing, breaking bottles and stuff like that. I remember packaging, went over across the street, talked to Jim Goff, and we worked that out. And I'm glad. I mean, it's been fun. After graduation, I was a research assistant at the school. I worked for Steve Pierce, and so I spent a term there, and that's when the MRL shock machine was installed, and ended up working with them on a couple projects. So MRL offered me the job out in Monterey, California. And in January, Michigan was going to say no to a job in Monterey. So went out and worked at MRL for a little over a year. I was part of the team that sold Dennis his first shock test machine when he was at IBM in Rochester. We started doing a little bit of contract testing for a few companies out of the West Coast. And I think my second project was frozen taco shells, which are interesting application of a very elaborate 5-step. And when I got there, the first 5-step, it was only 5 then, was published right after I got there. I had a little bit of input to it. But, like the taco shells, we weren't going to fix that with Kushner. They fixed it with reformulating a new recipe for taco shells. And so I had done some research work for Jerry Barnes at Sealed Air, which was a very new company, very young company. And so I called him, and he said, well, we need a guy in New Jersey. And so I left Monterey, California, and drove across country to Fair Lawn, New Jersey. I think it was probably the beginning of the end of my first marriage, but I was the lab manager at Sealed Air in New Jersey. And there was only one other lab. And Doug Nowakowski, another Michigan State graduate, had been in on building that was starting it up. And so I was the second one they hired. And the thing was that this was all bubble wrap. I mean, there were no bubble bags, there was no instant pack Sealed Air, certainly no cryovac and things like that. The process was that give us your product and what are your packages, and we'll take it back into the lab. We will develop our package in our materials, including the box and everything else, and if need be, we'll validate it, test it to NSTA standards, or NSTC, I guess it was then. Our salesmen would come to work at the lab, I'd work with them. We'd take the packages out that we developed, and the weight, the amount of material, and everything else. And it normally turned out to be a pretty good deal. So we started with, like I said, I started when they had 2. I kind of went a few other places in my career, but by the time I left, we had 30 some odd labs around the world. The bubble wrap was more expensive than almost anything on the market. And the way you could justify it is through reducing the package size, increasing the performance, and lighter weight. I decided I was going to go back to graduate school and work on my degree, my master's in transportation distribution management. And I spent one term there and decided that I wasn't built for school at that point in my life. I decided I'd go to work in the real world and ended up as a staff photographer and reporter for the Grand Blanc Evening News in Grand Blanc, Michigan for a while. And then got a call from Tenneco Chemicals, and they were looking for somebody in New York to bring to New York and try to expand their market for polyurethane foams and packaging. And I knew them from some relationships I had while I was with Sealed Air earlier. And so I took the job, worked in New York City for Tenneco 5 or 6 years, I guess. And basically it was just a marketing support, trying to help our sales staff and force and everything else be able to talk about packaging and understand what it was and what to ask and what to do, and working with the accounts to make sure that we do the best we could. Then I had the opportunity to go to work in Chicago. Well, actually, I didn't work in Chicago to begin with, but Package Engineering Magazine was looking for a staff, somebody, the East Coast, to bring on board as the East Coast editor. And one of my ex-bosses at Sealed Air recommended me to Bruce Holmgren. I don't know how many people remember him, but he was the head guy there from the editorial department. And so I worked for them for a few years and ended up moving to Chicago. I had gotten several calls from Jerry Barnes. They were looking for somebody else to come in and head up now, I think, we're 6 labs. And so he had called me about 2 or 3 times, wanting to know if I knew anybody. Well, I recommended people like Dennis Young, and they weren't interested. So he called me and looking for us. I said, Jerry, I'm looking for a job. I'll go to work for the company. I took the job, and it was in Danbury, Connecticut. So we moved, my wife and 2 kids and I, we moved from Chicago to Newtown, Connecticut, which is right next door to Danbury. And that was like 1982, and I retired at Sealed Air in 2009. And the interesting thing to me is that I have a mug, my first incarnation at Sealed Air, where I was celebrating the first $1 million sales month. And when I left, it was a $4.2 billion company. With, like I say, instead of 2 labs or 6 labs, we had 30 some odd labs around the world, which I had like staff responsibility for recruiting, training, operations, reporting, keeping everybody up to speed, educating our sales force. We had a training program. That was always part of it. What is packaging? What are the words? What are we doing, and what works and what doesn't work, and why do things break, and how do we know what to do about it? So, and I had a great time. They stuck by me and allowed me to be part of things like IOP, ISTA, and these other organizations. And yeah, it was very interesting. I spent a great deal of the latter part of my time there working on packaging in the environment, recyclability, sustainability, these sorts of things. I sat on a state committee in Connecticut to advise the legislative body on how to go forward on some of these issues like recycling, collections, labeling, things like that. I got involved with the ISO, the American delegation, for their packaging in the environment efforts to develop new standards and things on a broader basis for Europe and all the worldwide, as opposed to Connecticut or the U.S. So, like I said, I had a lot of opportunities there to do things other than just show up in the lab every day and drop things. I had a couple of opportunities to participate again in the industry, and just thinking about getting back into that kind of a environment. I like what I do. I get up in the morning, have a cigar, and a cup of coffee, and that's probably the highlight of my day.